they? Who they all day? Who they? Who they all day?
I don't think the Bengals are going 8-8. It's just a thing. I just don't think it's going to happen. My prediction of the Bengals going 8-8, well, they pretty much have to win out the season at this point. 0-5. Kyser, 0-5. Help me here.
They need some help to get to the 4 wins I predicted.
Oh my gosh.
Geesh.
I'm deeply concerned about this at this point. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Flying Pigskin podcast. I'm Tanya O'Rourke. I'm just a news anchor who, likes talking about the Bengals, except lately. And say hello, Scott.
Hello, everybody.
That's Scott Kyser. He's just Scott.
Yeah, I'm just me. Just here.
Just Scott. And then we have a guest today. I'm so excited. We've had guests a lot this season, and this is working out really well. A week ago, during the most miserable Bengals game I'd witnessed in maybe a decade, I'm on Twitter, as you are as a sports fan, right? You're on Twitter because you're just grousing on Twitter about this stinks, we're horrible, what the heck was that play, that kind of stuff. And I see Chad Lowe, Chad Lowe, actor, director, Chad Lowe from Dayton, Ohio. He's bitching about the Bengals too. So I was like, hey, why don't you come on the podcast with me? And he was like, sure, okay. And just as simple as that, he's here. Hi, Chad.
Hey. How are this? This is. I feel like this is therapy. This is like group therapy for long-suffering Bengal fans.
Maybe we should rename the podcast because I think this season we're gonna need it that way, right? We're all in this stew of misery together for this entire season. So you're right. This is like we all need to come together and hold hands and talk about our feelings. So how are you feeling about this season so far, Chad?
I get a lot of comfort from Twitter.
Do you?
Yeah, because at least I can share my frustrations openly with this team, and there have been many. It's been a long journey here. The last I don't know how many years, 20 plus years with the
I was going to say lifetime.
Yeah, it's been a lifetime. This season, I'm really excited about our head coach. I think it's been a long time coming to move on from Marvin. I think Marvin did a lot of great things for the team and for the fan base and for the city. And I think that the writing was on the wall a while ago. But just like most things with this ownership group, it takes them a while to read that writing on the wall that everybody else is so plainly seeing in front of them. So I have a lot to say about the Bengals. I could just keep talking, but then it would that would get annoying. So
let's just back up for a second because I don't think everyone realizes that you and your brother Rob grew up in Dayton, Ohio. Your dad still lives in Dayton, and so yep. Are you a lifelong Bengals fan then?
There's only really one way to be a Bengals fan,
That's
which
true.
is to be born into it, because I'm not sure anybody chooses to be a Bengals fan.
No,
so,
it's true.
I come by it very honestly. As you mentioned, I was born in Dayton. My brother and I were born in Dayton. And actually, he was born in Charlottesville, Virginia. So I always hold that against him. I have the pride of being born in Dayton, Ohio.
Heck
he doesn't get to share that. I grew up as a Bengal fan. I was born in '68. So that'll tell you how long it's been. Not that I was following them when I was, 1 or 2 years old, but as soon as I was aware of football, I was a Kenny Anderson fan and Isaac Curtis fan, and loved, obviously I loved Icky and I mean Corey Dillon. We've had so many great players. We've had so much talent. Mm-hmm. That's what's so frustrating for a lot of us is we've been so close. Look, we've been to 2 Super Bowls. A lot of franchises have not even come that close. So, and we we almost should have won the first Super Bowl. And so it's been a frustrating. We always seem to have just a glimmer of hope, and then seem to squander. Sometimes we hold that hope all the way through the season, and then it gets squashed in the first game of the playoffs.
Sometimes it's just the first play of the game. We have hope until that play, and then we go, oh.
Well, I remember that play with Carson against the Steelers, and I think that was Pickens, wasn't it? He threw that great pass to Pickens, and I thought, this is it. And then it was like the camera went away and went, uh-oh. You could hear the announcer saying, uh-oh, Carson's down. I thought, here we go again.
I was in the end zone where he was throwing from on that game, and you saw it happen, and it was awful. And then the crowd got so ugly. It was, and I will never forgive the Steelers for it. We'll never forgive them. That was our year.
Did it get ugly?
Yeah, it was terrible. We couldn't let like little kids go to the bathroom because it was just like fist fights everywhere. But I don't.
And God bless John Kitna.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't ask to be pushed into that role to back up our star quarterback, but there he was, right?
Yeah, he did yeoman's work there for a bit. It's you think about that, like in Kyser, so much talent on this team over the decades squandered in some ways. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, especially during those years. I mean, that was probably their best shot, and I know a lot of people harken back to that year. And
that was our season.
Yeah, that was going to be the year, but there's definitely been some guys that have wasted some really good years. Maybe one that we'll get to here in a little bit, who's currently not playing, but
so let's bring that up.
Have to bring that up.
Did you see the news? It posted maybe an hour ago that it's possible. Like, I guess I think this is kind of BS. The talk is that maybe the Bengals will trade away AJ Green, for high draft picks, and right. Dre Kirkpatrick's like, don't you dare do that, because then you're going to steal my sunshine, and he's not happy about it at all, which I wouldn't be happy about either. But I don't give a whole lot of credence to that, Chad, that they'll really do that, because they need butts in the stands, and AJ Green is on the sidelines and people are waiting for him to come back. I mean, I think the last shred of hope is when he comes back, maybe things will get better. Thoughts?
I think we don't deserve AJ Green.
I would
say that much. I don't think this ownership group deserves AJ Green. I think that AJ Green is the consummate professional and all about team in an era in which it's all about the stats and the numbers. I mean, let's talk about Antonio Brown for a second. But here's AJ Green committing to stay in Cincinnati because they took a shot and believed in him at the draft because he wants to emulate Larry Fitzgerald. I mean, that kind of loyalty should be rewarded in my mind. And yes, would I like to have a lot of early draft picks? I don't think if we send him to, let's say, the two teams they're thinking of, New England or the Saints, both who probably go deep, if not all the way in the playoffs. So what do those first round picks turn into? 30, 29, 28. So I don't think it's worth getting rid of AJ that way. But also you have to think about the chemistry in the room, and that Kirkpatrick is saying that's a good indication of what will happen. Here's the problem. Here's the elephant in the room. From how I see it, look, I've never owned an NFL franchise, and probably never will in my lifetime. But we need a general manager. We need somebody outside of the Brown family. God bless them. I've been very critical of them on Twitter, and I probably owe them an amends someday. But honest to God, you got to get somebody in there. You've got to let go. You got to relinquish some of the control. You've got to get it out of the family's death grip. I mean, it's a $1.8 billion franchise. That's worth $1.8 billion, and they performed this poorly. I saw that game on Sunday. Butts in the seats. There's nobody in those seats.
No one.
And by the way, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I think at this point, I mean, we've been through so much, from our terrible training facility that we had, from our not having an indoor practice facility to not having an up-to-date weight room. I mean, it's like this ownership group drags their feet. And I will tell you something. I'm not going to name names, but I know some people who are pretty high up in the NFL, and I've asked them, what is the problem with the Cincinnati Bengals? And I said, is it our owner? And they all said no. He's very, very smart, but he's very, very stubborn, and he runs a $1 billion modern-day NFL franchise like a little mom-and-pop shop. We have the smallest scouting staff in the entire NFL. I mean, this is, like, by the way, it's not the players. It's never been the players. We started by talking about all the squandered talent we've had. It's never been about the players. It's not about Andy Dalton. We have no offensive line. We let Whitworth walk. We didn't think he was valuable anymore. I mean, we make the cheapest, penny-wise, pound-foolish moves. And you know what? Chickens have come home to roost, or I should say the hens, because nobody's coming to these games anymore. And that's what it's going to take. And you know what? If I hadn't been born a Bengal fan, I never would have chosen to be a Bengal fan.
Why would you choose
that's how I feel.
Unless you just enjoy being miserable, why would you choose it? So let me ask you this. Kyser, when's the last time you went to a Bengals game? Sat your butt in a seat in a Bengals game?
The 49ers game week 2.
Okay, so you went this season because he's really a 49ers fan, but he knows everything about sports, so that's why he's here. Otherwise, we'd kick him out. But Chad, when's the last time that you came to Cincinnati and went to a Bengals game or went anywhere and saw the Bengals play?
It's been a while. I'm trying to think. I was up working in Vancouver for the opening game against Seattle, and I almost drove down. Mm-hmm. But I just thought, you know what I thought? I'm not going down there to Seattle, by the way, which is a great place to watch a game.
It
and by
is
the way,
so loud.
I mean, it was and a great owner who knew better than to screw around with the roster, who knew to get out of the way and God rest his soul, but knew to hire the right people. There is a common denominator in the NFL with the successful franchises, not the ones who are good 1 or 2 years or lucky enough to make the playoffs, but the ones who are always in the conversation. Mm-hmm. It's ownership. It's ownership. You think about it. Why are these God, and I hate the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I also envy them.
I do too.
So jealous.
I have the same Steelers. Bittersweet feeling about them. Like I want to punch them in the face, but I'm also like, guys, you guys are really cool. You know?
And it's ownership. I mean, people have pride, and they always talk about the culture and the pride. Let me go back to something positive. Having Zac Taylor as our head coach, I think, is going to change the culture.
All right, stop. I got to ask you. You got to dive deep on that. And Kyser, chime in here whenever you want to, because I think Zac Taylor is the nicest guy. I've interviewed him. He's been so kind. He was on our first show of the season, came in here. Good guy. Really good guy. But what in the world makes you think that he's going to be able to change that culture?
I will tell you why. I'm friends with Andrew Whitworth. And
I love Big Whit, by the way. Love Big Whit.
How could you not? So I asked Big Whit, I said, what do you think of this new head coach? He said, he says to me, you got the right guy. He said to me, this is absolutely the right guy to come in there and take this franchise over and turn it around. And, you know, he was not, like, I will say it for him, he would never admit it, but he was not treated very well on his way out the door. And that's the problem is people like the AJ Greens, the Andrew Whitworth, the people, Carson Palmer, people who give their heart and soul and put literally their entire physical lives on the line every weekend should be treated with so much more dignity and respect than we get treated by this ownership group. I mean, I hearken back to Hard Knocks when we went in and cut a guy at 5 o'clock in the morning and the guy starts crying. And it's like I don't even know who the guy was that did it. He walks in and he goes, no, we only cut based on skill and talent. And he was rude. And it made the Bengals look like exactly what they've been for so long, which is an ownership that doesn't care about the community, an ownership group that has this horrendous stadium deal that fleeces the people of Hamilton County and then has the gall to turn around and say, hey, I need more money to keep us competitive to clean up this. I mean, it's time and time again, these guys have shown nothing but disdain for the hand that feeds them. It's like, you're getting me going now. This is the passion I have. I'm like, literally, I'm so frustrated because I can't help it. I was born a Bengal fan. I'm sorry.
It's a curse that you were born with this mark on you. You can't help it. Can't get that spot off. You know what? Kyser, he sounds like one of us sitting in here every week going, it's ownership. They're under the cap significantly. They could be spending money to get personnel in there. You're right. That line, Kyser, ridiculous, right?
Yeah, well, and as far as Zac Taylor goes, it's just unfortunate right now because, you know, he's getting booed and the fans are, you know, just going after him because he's the new guy in town. But I feel bad because whether or not he's the guy right now, it doesn't matter who would be coaching this team. It's just an unenviable position. And I'm always under the assumption whenever you get a coaching change, you know, unless it's somebody who has a long track record, when you're getting these new guys in first time or maybe had one chance before, you just got to give them a little while to get things the way they want them. And, you know, so it's unfortunate that things have gone the way they've gone. But as fans, you have to give him time to do his thing. And I keep saying this every single week. Like, you're booing the wrong people when, you're booing him or you're booing Andy Dalton. Like, it's not their fault that it's gotten this bad. But, if he's going to be if he is the right guy, just give him time.
It'll give him tools.
There you go.
Well, certainly.
Give him tools, give him time. I completely agree with that. And I have to say, I'm a big Andy Dalton fan. I know that's not a popular opinion.
I like Andy.
But I think first of all, what he does for the community and what he does outside of football, how can you not love Andy Dalton and his wife? AJ, what they do is incredible for the community. They're amazing people. Now, is Andy Dalton Tom Brady?
No.
Is he elite? No, he's not. But is he a good, solid NFL quarterback? He's more of a game manager. He's not going to pull a Russell Wilson and get out there or Mahomes and win it with his legs, or even what Andrew Luck was able to do when he was playing. But that said, he's been a Pro Bowl player. He's had great numbers. Something about him in the big game. I don't know what that is. I mean, I know we all like to. Believe me, I get teased out here. You can't imagine the beatings that I take and the teasing that I get. Do
you even wear Bengals gear in LA?
I do, because it's unique and it sets me apart, and it garners lots of sympathy sometimes.
Yeah, it says sucker.
Yeah.
It does. My brothers are both in LA and they wear Bengals stuff too, and they're like, people just look at us funny, like, oh. But okay, so. We talked about this last week, Chad. I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. And Kyser, if your thoughts have changed on this. So last week we were talking about, we all agree about Andy Dalton. Not an elite quarterback, but a good quarterback. Better than good. And with, he was only sacked once yesterday, but let's be honest, Arizona's terrible. So,
yeah.
So, but we're worse, apparently. So, at what point do you pull the plug on some of the guys that are starters and say, hey, let's get some of these other guys in here to give them game time experience, see what we've got in our backups, see if we can't, see what we're looking at for next year? Because really this year is just a wash. Is that now? Is it 8 games in? Is it after AJ? Do we wait till see if AJ changes the game? Does anyone have an update? When is AJ coming back? Or is it like after the next Steelers game, or not at all? Like, what do we do this? Do we say, hey, Andy, have a seat just for a bit? We're going to put someone else in for a bit, see how they're doing.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it depends on how much you.
I don't know. That's a tough one, because it's also, I think if it were a head coach who'd been there longer, I'd say probably now. But we've got a new system. We've got a new quarterback, or new coaches. Probably not quite yet ready to have Andy take a back seat, because I think they're probably all. The other problem with Andy Dalton is great quarterbacks have one, maybe two offensive coordinators in their career. How many offensive coordinators does Andy Dalton have? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either.
Not more than two.
I think significantly more.
More than two in a season.
And that's a whole. Last season we had two. Right? Was it last season that we went through two, Kyser? Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say they brought in somebody, and obviously he would be on his third just in 2 seasons.
Yeah, you're right. You know what? There's something important about that consistency and having someone who you really know. They're in my head. We get each other. I mean, I'm sure it's in some ways like acting with someone. After a while, you just know each other, what they're going to do. You know how to work with that person to make it, the best performance you can have. I don't know what the answer is. So what do you think? Like, do you think, give it more time?
I personally do. I think we've got to give this, because look, that first game against Seattle, I had some hope. I thought, oh my God, this is happening. We have some hope. Yeah. Now, what happened between then and now? I don't know the game well enough to be able to figure out the X's and the O's and why things fell apart. But I do think that this team is better than 0-5. I kind of, in a weird way, believe our coach when he says he's got the right people there, except for the offensive line, which clearly, you get sacked 8 times in any game. There's a big problem. And anybody who's been following the Bengals saw this coming, when we let Whitworth go. and we let the other guy's name escapes me right now go in the same year. It was like, well, who's going to fix that? I mean, those are gaping holes in our offensive line.
I love Andrew Whitworth so much. It really still hurts me that we let him go. And it really does. There's never been, my estimation, besides Anthony Munoz, a finer person on and off the field that wore orange and black. You know what? Why don't we play real quickly? Coach Taylor talked about frustrated fans, which we are. Well, I am, and you are, Chad. And Kyser, you just sit there and laugh at us. So let's listen to what Coach Taylor had to say.
Great.
I get it. This is every fan base I've ever been around. They want to see wins. They want to see production. We haven't given them to it yet. They think they're frustrated. Check our locker room. We're frustrated. You know, we work so hard for this stuff, and it just hasn't come yet. But the day that it comes and it flips, it's going to be good times around here. So just hang with us, and we'll be there.
God, I feel so sorry for this guy. Why do I feel so sorry for this guy so soon? Is he going to burn out and just be like, I'm out? I don't know. I feel bad for him. I do.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's not dissimilar to what we saw today in Washington, which was, you know, I mean, we had Jay Gruden and everybody was, you know, we didn't want to see him leave the Bengals and we thought he could be the next head coach. But of course, we needed another, you know, 8 years of Marvin Lewis or 15 or 20 years or whatever it was. And, you know, and here he is, he's let go because he and ownership apparently, if you believe the reports, aren't on the same page about who they should draft as the quarterback of their, you know, for their future. And so here he goes. He's let go. So Zac Taylor, if again, I have to say it, if they'll get with the program literally and figuratively and come to this century and hire more scouts and start looking deeper into the draft and start getting the players, the tools that he needs, I think he's right. But if it's status quo and the same old with the Bengals, and it's kind of like, you know, hey, we're just good enough to get people in the seats, and I keep my franchise profitable, and I'm worth that $1.8 billion, you know, who cares? I just don't think there's a commitment to winning yet at the highest level, and I think you need the highest level, a commitment to do whatever it will take. Now, again, the problem is, look at Jerry Jones. I mean, here's another owner who wants to win so desperately, but can't get out of his own way. I mean, this is a guy who, you know, at least he wants to win and is very vocal about it. But it's like, so if you want to win, get out of the way and let the people who know the game handle it. Because he's clearly not. He keeps stepping in it every time, too. You know what's funny is I was thinking about the draft, and a lot of people play fantasy football. Do you play fantasy football?
I don't have a team this year. Kyser, how many teams do you have? How many leagues do you have?
I have 2, and I'm doing as well as the Bengals in one of my leagues.
But I love fantasy football. I just I don't know why. I don't know what happened, but I totally missed out on signing up this year. So anyway, go ahead. Give it to me about fantasy.
So here's my thought, like with the draft, you know, because and I was like, well, what's the big deal? The Bengals, you know, they always do fairly well in the draft. I mean, they haven't done anything like horribly egregious, like, you know, take Saquon Barkley with the second pick in a draft when you desperately need a franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
They haven't done anything quite like that. But what I was thinking was, you know, anybody who plays fantasy football with no knowledge of how it works or no knowledge of the players that are available can get through the first 1, 2, 3 rounds of the draft and do, you know, relatively well. But anybody who plays fantasy football will tell you that's not where this season is won. The season is won in like 3 through 12, where it's deeper and you have to look at people and really understand like what player has a potential for breaking out and who's a sleeper that really has a legitimate chance, or who's somebody that's fallen by the wayside that's going to have, you know, a new offensive coordinator who's going to turn their game around. And that's how you win fantasy football. And I think it's the same thing. I like that I'm putting fantasy before reality, but that's because I'm a Bengals fan.
Or an actor, either one.
And an actor too. But it's the same thing with the NFL. It's like, yeah, it's really hard to completely screw up the first 1 or 2 picks, but really those are like shiny hood ornaments on a car. The team is built in the later rounds of the draft, and you have to go deep. And we just don't have the scouting department. We don't have the ability to look that deep. I mean, do you think the Bengals could have found Antonio Brown? No way. They don't have scouts that are looking at that level.
Kind of happy about that one, but yeah, I get your point.
Right.
But Kyser, do you agree with that?
No, yeah, it's true. It's easy to hit home runs on the guys in the first couple rounds. It's the household names, the guys that star in college. And, I say that, and there's a lot of franchises that still manage to screw it up. But just in a general big picture thing, yeah, it is easier to get those guys in the first couple rounds and do well. But yet the deeper you go and you look at it, the back end of this roster and where things are built, like Chad said, that's where they struggle. I mean, and when you lose the shiny pieces at the top, when AJ Green is out and all again, hey, look, you did find a Tyler Boyd or whatever. Every now and then, a blind squirrel finds a nut. But
Yeah.
how many times do you see the Bengals have a player that it was like, oh, this guy was drafted in the 5th round, the 6th round, this was somebody who wasn't on anybody's radar. No, it's like they're constantly relying on 1 through 3. And after that, it's just these guys that mostly end up either, out on the street or on other rosters and never really producing. And so it's not just, oh, well, they're drafting these guys and other teams find a use for them because they've got a better scheme or a better fit and they're actually NFL players. It's no, these guys weren't even good enough to stay in the NFL. So, you do have to look at that as far as a long-term thing. And I mean, that going back to Zac Taylor, if they told him, hey, here's the keys and we're going to let you do what you do and we'll try to stay out of your way, then that's great. But if they continue to meddle and, even if they get more scouts, it won't matter if they want to put their hand in there. Kind of, the Jerry Jones thing is great because I despise the Cowboys a ton. So I love that Jerry can't get out of his own way. I love that he had success back when being the general manager and, he hasn't figured it out in the last 20 years. So I want that to keep happening. But for, any general franchise to be able to have consistent success, yeah, the owner just has to get out of the way.
But so here's the thing. Zac Taylor right now is in his honeymoon period or has been. That's when you get to say to your boss, in this case, the Brown family, I want A, B, C, and D all the way through. I want all of these things. If you can't give me those things, I'm not your guy. Shouldn't he have gotten those things by now? If they have hired those people, I have no idea that they have.
Well, you can't get it overnight because you're trying to build this thing and you're trying to have
scouts, the extra scouts, the general manager, like asking, like, hey, I need you guys to get out of the way so that I can do this. Or is it a situation, do you think, guys, where he's like saying, okay, we'll play by your rules for this first season and let's see how that goes. And then after the season says, this didn't work. And if you want to be a successful franchise, you got to do it my way.
You kind of stole exactly where I was going to go, is that if, he is playing by whatever they say, then, it's probably better that they do continue to lose the games because he can go back to them and say, look, this is what I was dealing with. This is what I'm working with. If you want me to get to the next level, if you want to see that success, if you're committed to winning, then you have to give me X, Y, and Z. And if you don't want to give me X, Y, and Z, you've got to give me at least X and Y, and I'll, try to fill in the blank of Z. If, they came to him and said, in the interview process, well, this is what we're willing to do, but we're also willing to do a little bit more than we did for Marvin. Whatever it was that they convinced him to take the job. And, again, they'll always say there's only, 32 of these jobs, so somebody's going to say yes. But either way, if they told him they were going to do a certain thing, then they have to allow that to happen. And yeah, I mean, maybe the best thing to happen for this team in the short term is that they just struggle and look awful so that he can say, well, now will you let me take over?
Chad, thoughts?
I couldn't agree more. I think that's probably pretty accurate. I mean, because he's also, he's new, so it's like he's clearly a very political guy. He clearly knows how to handle people, which I think is a big part probably of being a head coach. So he knows how to handle people, and I think he's saying all of the right things, which is another reason, by the way, that Bengal fans are booing him, because we had Marvin Lewis's pressers after every loss, and it was like he seemed disinterested. He made it was kind of like, we got to try better, and we just didn't play well enough. And he never got angry. Like we wanted, I don't know about you, but I wanted Marvin Lewis to like pound the podium and start screaming obscenities. I wanted him to pull like a Dennis Green and pull the, they are who we thought they were. Like I wanted him to go completely berserk. but he just never did. And we were like, are we the ones that are insane? Why is this guy not screaming and yelling? So I think there's a little bit of a hangover from Marvin Lewis, where people expect this new head coach to come in and start, pounding on the table and jumping up and down and screaming and yelling about our ineptitudes and the futility of this situation. But yeah, he's doing and saying the right things. And yeah, to your point, if it does continue to go this south, he'll have even more ammunition. One would think to turn around and say, guys, look, we tried it this way, but here's what we need to do to turn this thing around. One can only hope that the ownership will listen. But the problem is that's never happened in the past.
Yeah. So what makes anyone think this is going to change, guys? What makes any of you think that this? Because I just don't think that's possible. I don't think that's in the DNA of the ownership group.
I just don't think it is either. And that's what makes being a Bengal fan so incredibly frustrating. And believe me, my wife is a huge 49er fan.
Uh-oh.
And we have 3 daughters. And
you married well.
And I'm like, I know, I did, right? And I'm like, honey, I say to my daughters, I'm like, look, we're a big NFL. We got Red Zone on in the morning. We both have fantasy teams. We set our lineups, and it's all football all the time. And our daughters are kind of getting with the program. But they're also like, I'm like, guys, look, you can be 49ers fans. It's okay with me. You cannot be Giants fans. You have to be Cincinnati Reds fans. You have to be Ohio State Buckeye fans. You have to be Los Angeles. There's some things that are non-negotiable. I'm willing to relinquish. I wouldn't wish being a Bengal fan on anybody right now. So I'm not going to force my daughters to be Bengal fans. If they want to be Niner fans, then God bless them.
They cannot be Steeler fans either. Please add that to the list.
True. No, you're right. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that can't happen either.
No.
I mean, there's some teams, they might choose just to spite me, and that I think if I forced them to be Bengal fans, they'd probably turn around, in their teen years and become Steeler fans just to spite me.
No, they couldn't hate you that bad. They couldn't.
One would hope not.
We do have the
One
Ravens.
more thing about that.
Go ahead, Kyser.
About
Sorry.
that Zac Taylor thing is it's similar to the problem with the NFL when it comes to quarterbacks. So when the first one, it used to be, back in the day, you drafted a quarterback and he sat there for a few years, and then he eventually took over. Well, then guys started having success right out of college, and the formula became, well, you can't wait, for them to sit, because you've got to get them on these first contracts and you got to start winning, and you go from there. And it happened for a few teams, and it doesn't happen for every team like that. It doesn't necessarily work. Some guys need more time, and some, teams aren't built immediately for a guy to come in and just take over and, start world beating. Well, it's kind of the same thing with Zac Taylor and any of these new head coaches. Everybody wants the Sean McVay who walks in the door and immediately turns things around and gets them to the playoffs and knocking on the door and then getting to the Super Bowl. But that's not how every team is. So it's one of those things where it's a catch-22 when you want to follow the trends in the NFL. Everybody wants to. It's the same with like Kyler Murray. Well, Kyler Murray wasn't going to be able to turn around the Cardinals overnight. The team itself is in complete disarray besides Kyler Murray. Well, Zac Taylor, isn't like it's not the same situation as the Rams, where they had a roster that just needed to be, tweaked a little bit, and they had players there, and it was Jeff Fisher that was kind of in the way. No, this is different. You've got a team that and a franchise that is almost barren for the most part when you're looking at it from an NFL landscape. And so he can't just come in and wave a magic wand, and fans see other teams do that with head coaches. And because, again, he's coming right off of the tree there in LA, everybody's expecting, well, why doesn't he have the Midas touch, and why can't we just immediately turn around? It's not that easy.
Sean McVay had a roster full of stars. I mean,
well, he didn't have a roster full of stars, because that Rams team, it's still,
but
he was
given the tools.
Well, right. He was still missing some pieces, and there was a time when Jared Goff was looked at as a first-round bust. But when you bring in a guy all of a sudden who can harness his skills and start coaching these guys up, and he gets a few more of his guys in there in a scheme that fits that team, well, now all of a sudden, boom, it looks like, well, they did it overnight. Well, they had players, but they weren't being coached right. When Zac Taylor comes into Cincinnati, they don't necessarily have the players, and he's got a scheme that, you've seen it in flashes, where it can work, and it will work if you give it time, and he gets his guys, but it's not it's not the same type of roster where you can just snap your fingers and boom, everything's great.
Are we going to win any games this season, Chad?
You know, I think that we play the Dolphins, right?
Well, we do play the Dolphins, and it's the last game of the season, which could be the game to figure out who's going to get one. You know what I mean?
You know, that game, I could see that game getting flexed to like Comedy Central.
I feel like someone else said that recently. That you're absolutely correct. Like, I want to watch it just to see what's going to happen here. Of course, I'm a Bengals fan, but yeah, I mean, so you think it could come down to last week? You think it's possible this team is that bad that they may not win?
I don't. By the way, I don't. I do think that the team will win a game. I think we'll win a few games. But again, I will be satisfied if we're competitive. Honest to God, we can lose every game. It's okay with me. But if I see effort, if I see a team that's in it, that's not getting sacked 8 times, that's offense is shut down completely, and a defense that's just, losing to all of these rookie quarterbacks who are, the backups, then I'm demoralized. But if I see a game like we had against Seattle, and we lose every game of the season, I'm thinking, you know what? This is the right guy. Let's stay the course. Everything is going to be okay.
Well, then hold on.
I just need hope.
Okay, so there was hope yesterday.
Yeah,
They went down and scored 2 touchdowns in a row and then, left too much time on the clock. They tied up the game. There was hope for a little bit during that game. I mean, it didn't look good, and then it looked good, and then it didn't turn out. It's just, was there progress? Did you see progress in that game?
A little bit. New system. I mean, I think, again, like Taylor said, I think we do need to be patient a little bit with this. The problem is that here's the problem. It's the fan base, all of us who love the Bengals, have been calling for changes for so long now. I mean, like 10 years ago, it was time for Marvin Lewis to go. I don't mean to disparage the guy, but it was time. And so we're so beyond frustrated and tired of this crap that it's the most unenviable position to be in for anybody. So, like, I understand why the fan base isn't patient, and I get it. But like I said, I'm not patient either. But if you could just show me that we're on the right path, that we're competitive in games. Like, I don't want to play Arizona and yes, there was some stuff that was positive, but it was Arizona.
I know.
It's like if we do you think honestly we could beat Clemson right now? I don't know. I'm not sure we could.
Ohio State, no. All right, so we know you got to get going soon. So let's just a few more questions. One, we got to play Baltimore at Baltimore. How bad do we lose? I mean, I'm assuming all of us are going to say that we're going to lose that game. I think we lose that game hands down. We're going to lose. But what is the point spread on this one? It's our 12-point spread right now. That's like huge.
It's 12 points right now, the spread?
Yeah, it's 12 points.
Boy. I mean, listen, it could be, again, who knows with this team? We could get blown out, and we could lose by 42, or it could be competitive. I don't think we're going to win.
No. Kyser, what do you think?
Either way, we're not winning.
No, we're not winning. Kyser, what do you think?
I think this gets ugly in a hurry. That Lamar Jackson is a much better version of Kyler Murray right now. And you saw what Kyler Murray was able to do, on the road. This is the Ravens at home. The Ravens have been looking to get back after they've, suffered a couple of games where people doubted, the fact that they were any good because they started off the season against the Dolphins and racked up all these points and yards against teams nobody cares about. So I think the Ravens, kind of want to prove something. It's a divisional game and it's at home for them. Yeah, I think the Ravens win running away.
By the way, I said the Dolphins was the last game. It's the second to last game of the season. We just are trying to make it the last game of the season because we want it to end sooner.
Well, let me tell you this. It'll be the last game of the season I watch if we can. That's for sure.
All right. Real quickly, Cincinnati. I mean, I know you grew up in Dayton, but we were talking about this off air quickly. You remember like the Uncle Al show on our station, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Uncle Al and Captain Windy, for sure. I mean, that was my childhood. That and the Bob Braun and the 70/70 Club, which was more of like my grandparents' show, but I was more of like a Captain Windy fan.
Where you liked Captain Wendy, huh? She's still around, by the way.
Yeah. I had a little crush on Captain Wendy, I think.
And of course, you're a Reds fan, right?
Yep, absolutely. Reds. I mean, huge Reds fan. Get out there as often as I can to go see a game.
Do you really?
Yeah, I mean, I make one or two. I try to make at least one or two a year. I always see them when they're here in Los Angeles, and huge Reds fan. Love the Castellinis. Think that they're maybe haven't made some of the right decisions, but they're definitely committed to winning. And I think it's been a great disappointment. Look, thank God for the Bearcats, right? With their upset victory on Friday night. I mean, because otherwise, I'm just starting to feel like
I know.
I love Cincinnati. It's a great city. People who don't know Cincinnati, who go to Cincinnati, always come back and say, God, that's actually a really cool town.
It's a great town.
We deserve better, and we got to culturally. We just have to shake off these lean years here. The Reds need to get back in the conversation, and the Bengals need to be competitive. And I'm hopeful for the Queen City.
I am too. Always. I remain hopeful. I love it. It's my hometown. And then what's going on with you? What do you have in the works right now?
I've been directing a lot. I still do some acting here and there, but I'm directing a lot. I actually tonight on Fox. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention it.
Oh, it's okay.
Network. But tonight on Fox, I directed an episode of 911, and it's the second part of a big tsunami episode, and it's actually really great. I'm really proud of the episode, and I'm excited to watch because it was like an epic scale. This episode, I couldn't believe I got to do the things I did for a television show. We had a huge tsunami hitting Santa Monica. So if you're looking for something to watch, if you just want to ignore the Browns tonight, get beat by the Niners, then I say tune into Fox and watch this 911 episode that I directed. And you could also DVR it. If you needed to.
That's right.
Watch it then. So I'm doing that, and I directed an episode of The Flash, which is a show that's on the CW. I just finished that. That was why I was up in Vancouver. So I pretty much do that. I direct a lot, and I'm out here, so of course I have to be writing and developing and all the things that everybody does. I don't take yoga. I'm not eating kale. I'm not. And let's see what else I don't know.
Still a Midwesterner at heart, huh?
Yeah, no soy lattes. No. In fact, I had last night. I cooked myself a Pine Club steak that my father had sent me frozen.
The Pine Club.
I'm still very much. And if you send me Jeff Ruby's, I'll cook that up too.
I would too. Someone send it to me too. Kyser, any questions before we run out of here?
No, but I like the slide in prediction there that the Niners are going to beat the Browns tonight. What score do you got for me, Chad?
You know what I think? I think I'm not a big Baker. Look, once Baker Mayfield planted the OU flag in the middle of the horseshoe, he lost me forever.
Yes.
And his stupid, geeky, in the air tonight drum solo that he does in the middle of the field and is criticizing the other players for being drafted. I just think the guy's a punk, and I think he's going to be shown up. I'm not a fan. So I think it's going to be, let's say, 31-17 Niners. That's my prediction. 31-17.
Works for me. I'll take it.
And if that happens, it'll be a happy household because my wife will be happy. If they lose,
there you go.
It'll between being a Niner fan and their rebuilding period and a Bengal fan, this is not been a very happy football house.
No.
But at least I've got my Buckeyes who don't ever seem to let me down, and we always beat Michigan, which just thrills me to no end.
Of course, the Ohio State go Bucks. OH.
I-O.
Thank you. And so, Chad, thank you. You are awesome for coming on. Come on anytime. When you come to Cincinnati, hit me up. Come in. Great. I'd love to meet you in person. You're so great to do this. As we sign off on the Flying Pigskin, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying my pleasure, and I love your podcast, and I look forward to calling up at all hours of the night to complain and bitch and moan. And listen, I'll also call to celebrate if we end up winning something. Yes,
do. You got my cell phone. You're more than happy to text me too if you want to. But listen, Perfect. We've had a blast. You guys, you know how to subscribe. Apple, Stitcher, Google Play, anywhere you find your podcast. Do that all the time. We'd love to have you on board with us listening to the Flying Pigskin podcast. So we'll hope for a win against Baltimore. We know it's not going to happen, but hope springs eternal around here, don't it?
Stranger things have happened, Tanya.
No, they don't. No. But I appreciate the optimism out of you, Kyser, specifically. Chad Lowe, thank you. You're amazing. Kyser, thank you. And guys, we're going to leave it here. Who day?
Who day?
Who they?